Mr. King, we've seen people on both sides invoke the name of your father over the course of these protests. What do you think he'd make of what's going on right now?
I believe that, first of all, had he lived, we would have resolved many of the issues that we are still addressing today, because he wanted to eradicate what he called were the triple evils. And he defined those evils as the evil of poverty, racism, and violence in our nation and world. Because he did not live, that mission was not complete. And therefore, throughout my mother's life, she worked to eradicate those evils. I believe there are things that can be addressed. I believe we can become a much better society.
The protests there are just getting bigger and bigger. At the same time, they're also getting more peaceful. Do you think we're now seeing a better representation of America on the streets?
The reality is there were far, far more nonviolent protests than there were violent ones. Overwhelmingly, the majority of people were nonviolent protesters. And not only are those numbers the same, they're actually growing even as we speak. More and more people are protesting in a nonviolent way. And I think that's a very good sign.
Mr. King, the video of George Floyd's death spread so quickly on social media. That obviously wasn't something that was possible as your father was, when your father was alive. I saw a protest poster this week that said, "What if there wasn't a video?" which really struck me in the heart, because I was curious, do you think there would be such a strong reaction if we were hearing or reading about this story as opposed to seeing it with our own eyes?
In the absence of seeing that video, I'm sure there would have been outrage regardless, because there would be individuals telling the story. But the video is so graphic, so heinous, so awful, so tragic that it's hard to even understand why a person, a human being who's supposed to protect and serve, a law enforcement officer, would put his knee on a man's neck so that he can't breathe. And the man was constantly asking for help for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. In fact, at the memorial service, just a couple of days, the most significant part of the memorial service, from my perspective, was for us to stand there at the end of the service for 8 minutes and 46 seconds and realize how much time it was that this inhumane act was done.
Black Lives Matter is now written in big letters on the road to the White House, now officially Black Lives Matter Plaza. Is any of this getting through to the president?
My impression initially would be no. I don't know what will, quite frankly. I mean, you never, in the tradition of nonviolence, you never give up. You have to always retain and maintain hope. But I think people are fired up in a positive way and want to see a leadership change and are going to vote like they've never voted before.
Mr. King, your father famously had a dream. Can I ask what's yours?
My dream is for my daughter and all children to have the kind of world where everyone can have decent education, everyone can have decent housing, everyone can have health care, and everyone can have justice. Black people and brown people and poor whites don't really have justice in the United States, and maybe in other countries as well. But that is a flawed system that must be changed. Institutional racism is one of the major problems as it relates to the black community and the brown community. We are 13% of the population, that is blacks, and yet 60, 70, and 80% of the jail population. That means the policemen are profiling black people, and that has to change. There will be other incidents. We saw today Governor Cuomo in New York City propose legislation that he wants to create New York, the state of New York, the best policing, and use that as a model for other states to implement. So I think we're going to see some changes very rapidly. And I really don't think we have a choice, quite frankly.
Well, Mr. King, at the end of a very difficult week, that's a positive note to end on. We thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you. Honored.
Guys, it's remarkable to hear someone who's been so personally affected by this movement, who's literally lost their father, still be so compassionate.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, clearly. I don't know if you guys have ever heard the full I Have a Dream speech.
Yep.
Previously, I'd only ever heard small grabs of it, and I was on a car trip a couple of years ago, and the full speech came on. I mean, the grace, the vision, the dignity in those words sends chills down your spines. If you get a chance, go online and have a listen to it. It's really quite something.
The way
It's the
he
same message today.
Yeah, and the way he started there by making the point that if what had happened to his father hadn't happened, he really believed he could have finished the job. I'd never thought of it in those terms
Yeah.
before, but I think he's exactly right.